So if we use the distance formula, what I like to do is I like to name this guy x1, y1, and this guy x2, y2. And that's because the first guy's the first point, and the second guy's the second point. That's all. I mean, it's just a name. It doesn't matter which one you put to which, but I like to do the first guy 1 and the second guy 2. So x1 is -3 minus 4 squared plus 2 minus -1 squared, all under the hood, equals the distance, okay? So I want you to simplify the guts of the hood first. So that's going to be 49, because -3 minus 4 is -7, and -7 squared is 49. 2 minus -1 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. And then we put that under the hood, so it's the square root of 58. Everybody understand where I got that? So the distance between those two is like 7.62. And all we did was follow the formula. When you're keying in your calculator, depending on your calculator, sometimes if you're going to put the guts and the hood at the same time, I add another parenthesis here to make sure all of that is under the radical, okay? But I usually do the guts and then just put a hood over it after I finish, okay? Just to make sure you don't make a silly error on your calculator, because some kids key it wrong in the calculator and get all the wrong answers. So don't do that. Okay, so what I do here is I draw a right triangle. So I go down to the level of that other point and go straight across. You see why I'm making a right angle right there? And if I want to know the distance between the two, what I'm looking for is that hypotenuse, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks on the bottom, and 1, 2, 3 here. And what can I use to find the third side? Famous guy. Famous guy. Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Actually, the distance formula is derived from a squared plus b squared equals c squared, okay? That's what it's derived from, but it's using the coordinates of the points. So then we have 3 squared plus 7 squared equals c squared. 9 plus 49 equals c squared. 58 equals c squared. C equals square root of 58. Same answer. If I graph 1/2 and 1/2 up here, look where I end up. That's kind of in the middle of that line. You see how it's the midpoint of those 2 points? So it makes sense. It's really hard to find the midpoint given 2 points on a graph unless you know what you're doing, because of you're going through different boxes. Unless the lines are vertical or horizontal, then you can do it easily. But if it's crooked, you can't really, you just have to eyeball it, okay? So when I add 2 things together and divide by 2, what am I finding? Average. That's what you do with test grades. If you have 2 test grades, you divide them by 2. If you have 3, you divide them by 3, right? So what the midpoint formula is, if you ever forget, is average of the x's, average of the y's. Got it? That's what you're finding. So if I have points, let's do these. -3, 2, and 4, -1. Let's use the same points and find the midpoint. The midpoint is average of the x's. What is -3 plus 4?
1.
What is 1 divided by 2?
0.5.
And what is 2 plus -1?
1.
Divided by 2?
0.5.
So that is the midpoint of these 2 points. Now let's go see if that's true. Let's go back to the graph before. So in this problem, they're not giving, and you're going to have 3 of these for homework, so do them first because they're the hardest ones on the page, or the last 3 on the page. This one, they give you one of the endpoints, they give you the midpoint, and they want you to find this other endpoint, okay? So you put things where they go. I call this midpoint 1 and midpoint, I put x1 and y1, and I call this midpoint 1 and midpoint 2, okay? So, the formula says x1 plus x2 divided by 2 equals midpoint 1, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2 equals midpoint 2. So, I have this endpoint here. I'm going to name this x1 and y1 and this one x2 and y2. Everybody get that? And so I would put negative 4 plus the second x divided by 2 equals 6. Now this is a little bit harder because we have to leave the x2 alone to find out that point. So we multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of that 2 in the basement. And we get negative 4 plus x2 equals 12, and x2 equals 16 when we add 4 to both sides. So we know that this is a 16. Now let's do the y's.
So I thought there was just a difference of 10 between negative 4 and 6, and just added 10.
Yeah, I need to check it.
That's a good way to do it. I saw you counting on your fingers.
Yeah. 'Cause I was thinking, it's
I saw it happening.
like if you go from 10, how does 4
But if you
and
use the
6?
formula, it'll work too. And I'm going to give you the formula so you can do it that way or logically, yes. So we multiply both sides by 2, and we get 7 plus y2 equals 6. So y2 equals negative 1 when I subtract 7 from both sides.